Welcome to today's deep dive. Whether you are prepping for a big meeting, commuting, or you're just incredibly curious about how the human mind works, our mission today is to explore a really profound and frankly incredibly relevant tension.
Yeah, it's a tension that I think literally everyone listening deals with on a daily basis.
Oh, absolutely. We are looking at this tug of war between our deeply human desire to be perfectly understood by others and our fundamental right to, well, keep our inner worlds completely hidden.
Right, the right to just stay a mystery.
Exactly. And to do this, we are pulling from a fascinating, really layered philosophical text called The Tongue Before the Mouth.
Such a great title, by the way.
It really is. And it contains these excerpts from a writer named Jacques Sixenson. He writes these gorgeous defenses of mystery and the unknown.
Right, and then the text interrupts him with these really sharp, jarring interventions by another writer named Clera Transparent.
Yeah, and she argues from the complete opposite perspective, this idea of forced visibility. And I should say right up front, we aren't picking sides today. We're not saying one is politically or morally right. We're just mapping out how these two completely different viewpoints collide.
Yeah, we're just laying out the source material for you to explore.
Right. So I want you to picture, if you will, two completely different worlds. On one hand, you have this vibrant Creole Caribbean port city. It was originally built on a strict, rigid colonial grid, but over time...
The city just kind of took over, right?
Exactly. The vines, the people, the messy reality of everyday life have just completely overgrown that rigid grid. It's chaotic but alive.
Yeah, a real living ecosystem.
And on the other hand, imagine a terrifyingly perfect dystopian society where absolutely everything, the walls, the floors, even the clothes people wear, is made entirely of glass.
It is the ultimate contrast, really. I mean, you have a world that inherently embraces the messy, the hidden, the overlapping, set directly against a world that has literally outlawed secrets entirely.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with that first world, the port city, and this idea of how we try to capture reality without destroying its mystery.
Right, so Sixasant introduces us to this character named Marie-Salomé.
And she's a cartographer, right? But not a normal one?
Exactly. She's a cartographer, but she doesn't draw maps of, roads or coastlines or typical terrain. She maps the invisible things that traditional geography completely ignores.
Which is such a wild concept.
It is. Her cartography is entirely sensory and emotional. She draws maps of, like, the smell of a street at 2 p.m.
Wow.
or the exact temperature of a spoken word. She'll map the precise angle of an old man leaning away from a truth that he just doesn't want to hear.
Which is such a beautiful concept, but I always have to ask, why do it? Why map the invisible?
Well, what do you think?
To me, it feels like she's trying to capture a vibe or maybe a deeply personal memory. And trying to map a deeply personal memory using a standard, rigid GPS grid it's like trying to take a photograph of a dream.
Oh, that's a really good way to put it.
Right, because the moment you force that atmospheric weight into a flat 2D image, it loses the very essence that made it real in the first place.
Yeah.
You end up pinning it down like a dead butterfly on a board.
That is a perfect analogy, because traditional cartography demands objective data, right? It demands that you strip away the subjective human experience to provide this universal set of coordinates.
Which is useful if you're driving, but not if you're living.
Exactly. And Marie-Salomé is rebelling against that. She wants to document reality, but she refuses to pin it down and strip it of its life.
Right.
And this philosophy is truly tested when she meets a character named Théo.
Oh, Théo. I love this part.
So Théo arrives in the city on a Wednesday, which the text beautifully notes is the day the sea changes its mind. And he carries just one thing, a single notebook.
And what's inside the notebook is, frankly, kind of crazy.
Inside this notebook is one continuous 200-page sentence with absolutely zero punctuation. Just a single sentence about the distance between bodies.
Wait, hold on. I didn't stop you there. A single sentence. 200 pages long.
Yep. No commas, no periods.
With no punctuation.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest, that sounds incredibly frustrating to read. Like, how is... Right. Which is what we always expect in these stories.
They actively respect each other's opacity. That's a key word here. Opacity is their fundamental right to remain unreadable.
They don't try to solve each other. They just let each other be.
Exactly. They meet at the surface. The text uses this brilliant metaphor of the Caribbean Sea touching the Atlantic Ocean.
Oh, I love this imagery.
When those two massive bodies of water meet, they don't conquer one another. They don't dilute into a single uniform body.
Right, there's a visible line.
They touch at the boundary, and that boundary creates a beautiful turbulence. It's a zone of mixing that belongs to both and neither. They agree to exist in the space of not fully understanding.
Think about that in the context of your own life for a second. Think about a relationship, a friendship or a partnership, where you don't feel that exhausting need to know every single thought the other person has.
It sounds kind of freeing, honestly.
It really does. But if Marie and Theo's meeting at the surface is the ideal, what happens when a society outlaws that exact surface?
Well, that's where things get dark.
Because Clera Transparent intervenes in the text right here, and she brings us to the Republic of Glass.
Right. If Sixth argues for the right to be opaque, Transparent asks us to imagine a society of total, inescapable legibility.
Where everything is visible.
Everywhere. In the Republic of Glass, citizens are legally required to fill out Form 77B.
Form 77B.
Yeah.
Sounds very bureaucratic.
It is the required form for the disclosure of interior states. You had to meticulously document your emotions, your passing thoughts, your inner weather.
And crucially, you cannot use metaphors.
No metaphors allowed.
Metaphor is banned in the Republic because metaphor is legally classified as a form of concealment. You can't just say, your heart is heavy.
No, you have to provide a clinical data point of your psychological state.
Well, let me challenge this premise for a second. Because in our real world, we demand transparency all the time.
Oh, constantly.
We want transparency from our politicians, from massive corporations, from social media algorithms. We generally treat transparency as the ultimate virtue. Why is it framed as an act of violence here?
This raises an important question, and the text draws a very sharp line here. We have to differentiate between institutional accountability and the forced exposure of the human soul.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Well, demanding that a government show its budget is accountability, right? It's necessary.
Right, because it affects everyone.
But demanding that a human being translate every dark, messy, contradictory corner of their psyche into public data, that is an erasure of their humanity.
Because it forces you to flatten yourself just to be understood by the system.
Exactly. You lose your dimension.
Think about your own workplace, or even your social media feeds. How often are you subtly forced to fill out your own version of Form 77B?
Wow. Yeah.
Right? Translating your complex life into a perfectly digestible post or a cheerful Slack message just to prove you are engaged and quote-unquote transparent.
That is so true. And the text illustrates the horror of this through two characters in the Republic. There's Lux, who is a worker whose literal job is to flag citizens for hiding their emotions on Form 77B.
Like an emotion police officer.
Pretty much. And then there's No, a prisoner who simply refuses to comply.
Just says no, literally.
Right. No is brought in for questioning and submits a completely blank form, just empty white space.
Which is the ultimate, quietest act of rebellion you could possibly make in a world made entirely of glass.
Just handing over a blank sheet of paper.
And No delivers this brilliant, pivotal argument in what is called the clarification room.
Which sounds terrifying, by the way.
It is a sterile room
Wow.
of blinding, inescapable light, no shadows anywhere. And No tells the interrogators that the Republic is terrified of the dark, but they fail to understand that the dark is structurally necessary for life.
Structurally necessary. How so?
No uses the physics of a star as an example.
Okay.
A photon of light is born in the nuclear furnace of a star's core, right?
Right.
But it takes 100,000 years of traveling through the absolute crushing darkness of the star's interior before it finally reaches the surface and shines.
Wow. The darkness is literally the incubator for the light. It needs the dark to become light. Yes. Or look at the human body. To process an image, to literally see light, the human eye requires a camera obscura.
A dark room.
It needs a dark chamber inside the skull. Noah Parris' point is that human freedom functions under the exact same biological and physical laws.
So freedom requires the dark.
Freedom requires an unilluminated, intensely private, internal darkness to function. If you light up every corner of the mind, you blind it.
That is incredible. And Lux, the worker whose entire career is hunting down secrets, is so profoundly moved by No's blank form that she folds it into a paper bird.
Yeah, she just walks away.
She walks out of her job, leaves the Capitol, and as she walks, her glass clothes literally start cracking and falling off her body.
She's molting.
She sheds this transparent shell to enter the margins, the opaque, messy world. So how does a person or a whole society actually break free from that rigid, transparent grid?
Because you clearly don't do it with a straight line.
No, you don't. You do it with a storm, and you do it with a brand new syntax. which brings the narrative back to the Creole Caribbean port city.
Right, back to the messiness.
Exactly, and the text dives deeply into the linguistic and cultural definition of Creole. It argues that Creole is not a fraction.
It's not like half French and half African or half anything.
No, it is a complete whole. It's a parliament of contradictions that somehow manages to hold the grammar of several different worlds inside one single functioning body.
It's the absolute refusal to be sorted into pure, neat categories.
And this philosophy leads our cartographer Marie-Salomé to the market, where she literally buys a word from an old woman named Tante Lucienne.
I love this scene. Tante Lucienne sells forgotten, necessary words from an indigo-lined wooden box.
Buying a word like you'd buy a mango at a fruit stand. I just love that imagery. It's so tangible.
It really makes language physical, and the specific word she buys is diode.
Désode.
Yeah, it translates roughly to a state hovering right between order and disorder.
A productive chaos.
Exactly, productive creative mess. It is the weed breaking through the concrete. And the exact moment she buys this word, the city is hit by a massive physical storm.
Just total chaos.
It rips the roofs off of the colonial houses. It literally tears painted words and rigid slogans off of the walls, scattering the letters across the streets and into the harbor.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because you'd think the storm would just be framed as a tragedy, right? A purely destructive force.
Sure, usually that's how storms function in literature.
But I see this storm almost like a DJ.
A DJ. Okay, tell me more.
Yeah. It takes this strict, geometric, colonial grid of a city, and it just remixes it. It chops up the historical samples, the scattered letters, the broken buildings, and turns it into a messy, beautiful, living track that the people can actually dance to.
That is exactly what happens. The morning after the storm, the city starts speaking what the text calls a post-storm Creole.
A remixed language.
The scattered fragments of signs form completely unintended new sentences on the ground. But the most powerful embodiment of this remix, as you called it, is the flamboyant tree in Marie-Salomé's courtyard.
Oh, the tree.
During the storm, the tree loses a massive branch. It is a severe structural wound. But pay attention to how the tree responds.
Right. It doesn't do what the Republic of Glass would do.
No, it doesn't practice transparency. It doesn't just leave the open, jagged wound exposed and sterile for everyone to analyze.
And it doesn't practice opacity either. It doesn't try to hide the break or pretend the storm never happened.
It practices transformation.
But wait, how does a person, or a tree for that matter, actually grow new shoots from a trauma without just suppressing it or oversharing it? Like, what is the actual mechanism there?
The mechanism is metabolization.
Metabolizing it, like digesting it.
Exactly. The tree allows the contradictory elements to coexist. The wood is broken, yes, but the root system is alive.
Right.
Within days, new shoots emerge directly from the broken, jagged wood, and they bloom into these violently red flowers.
Oh, wow.
The tree doesn't resolve the damage into a neat, easily understandable lesson, it just incorporates it. This is the absolute essence of désode.
It is taking historical damage, the literal breaking of your branches, and converting that into a brand new, thriving form of life that completely defies categorization.
It's beautiful.
It is. So we can see how a city or a tree metabolizes its history. But how do individuals carry the weight of profound personal loss? Because the text eventually reveals the source of Marie-Salomé's own grief, doesn't it?
It does. We learn that her mother died suddenly in the middle of that crowded market, and she died mid-word.
Just abruptly cut off.
Yes. The last sound she ever made was the prefix day.
And it takes years, but Marie-Salomé finally realizes that her mother was trying to say désode.
The word she bought from the box.
Exactly. And every single invisible map she has been drawing since that day, the map of the temperature of a word, the map of the harbor sound, every single map has been her subconscious way of drawing the missing letters to complete her mother's interrupted syllable.
It is a devastating and beautiful revelation of how grief functions. We try to finish the sentences of the people we've lost.
We really do.
And realizing this prompts her to finally communicate directly with Théo. She writes him a letter, and she tells him she doesn't want to name him or categorize him or demand that he explain his endless sentence.
She gives up the need to fully understand him.
She simply says she wants to stand beside him on the dash.
The dash, like the punctuation mark.
Exactly, the horizontal line that bridges the said and the unsaid.
That is so poetic. So they finally meet at the seawall in the dark. And I love that it's not this grand romantic merging where two souls become one perfectly transparent entity.
Right, there's no sudden profound clarity.
They just touch hands. And they read each other's calluses. It's a respectful meeting of two entirely separate topographies. They share the dash.
They preserve their dark chambers.
But they aren't the only ones dealing with the weight of history in this text. There's another character, Da, who is dealing with generational memory. Da writes letters to a sailor from 3 centuries ago who passed by the island without stopping.
She throws these letters into the sea, and eventually the sea starts returning things to her shore.
Physical things.
Right. It returns a brass button, a green bottle, an iron key without a lock. Artifacts of the past.
But Da isn't satisfied with those physical objects. She sits down and writes a list of what the sea never returned.
The things that can't be washed ashore.
She lists the light from a stolen village. She lists unwritten poems. She lists the stolen generations of the Middle Passage. And it makes me wonder, how do our bodies actually remember histories and traumas that we never even personally experienced?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the text is introducing the concept of the body as an archive.
The body keeps the score, essentially.
Exactly. And there is actual biological mechanism to this, which aligns with modern science, things like epigenetics and fascia research.
Right, the idea that trauma is inherited.
The argument here is that the body doesn't just store memories in the brain's hippocampus. It stores them in the connective tissue, in the muscles, in our literal reflexes.
A flinch can be passed down through generations.
Precisely. The body remembers the darkness of the hold of a ship centuries later, altering how a descendant breathes or reacts to stress today.
So the trauma literally changes the biological architecture. Da's list of what the sea kept then is the ultimate act of resistance. By cataloging the continuous absent, she ensures that the sea, which represents this massive force of erasure and forgetting, doesn't get the last word.
She is documenting the dark chamber.
She is asserting the right for those unwritten poems and stolen lights to hold space in the present, even if they can never be fully translated or recovered.
It's a refusal to let the past just disappear into the glass.
We have truly navigated a wild philosophical landscape today. I mean, we've explored Jacques Cixoussan's beautiful defense of opacity, that fundamental right to remain mysterious, to be unreadable, to meet people at the surface without demanding to consume them.
Right.
And we've grappled with Clera Transparent's stark warning about the violence of forced visibility in the Republic of Glass.
We've seen how desode, that creative, messy space between order and chaos, allows a broken tree to metabolize its trauma and bloom.
And how standing on the dash allows two people to connect without erasing each other's boundaries.
We've uncovered how vital the dark chamber is. Without it, whether you're a photon in a star or a human trying to maintain your freedom, the light simply cannot exist.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring this right to you, the person listening right now.
Yeah, how does this apply today?
You live in a hypervisible digital age, an age that constantly demands that you fill out Form 77B.
Every single day.
Every app, every platform, every corporate culture is demanding that you post, share, explain, and translate your deeply complex inner life into neat, consumable data.
They want you completely transparent.
But this text we've explored today is a radical permission slip. It is permission to preserve your own dark chamber. You do not have to be fully legible to the world. You are allowed to be a complex, uncategorizable desode.
You are allowed to be a whole parliament of contradictions without ever owing anyone a simple explanation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which leaves us with this final thought to chew on. In a world that is screaming at you 24/7 to make every single part of yourself perfectly legible and perfectly transparent.
Which is only getting more intense, by the way.
Right. We are rapidly approaching an era where artificial intelligence and neural technology might literally be able to read our biological responses, our heart rates, our microexpressions, before we even process them ourselves.
They'll map our minds before we can.
If we all have a fundamental right to keep our inner worlds hidden, what happens when the technology around us makes the dark chamber of the human mind completely obsolete?
Will we fight to protect our silence?
Or will we willingly live in the Republic of Glass? Something to think about. Until next time.